Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of 9/11 Free Fall. I'm the host, Andy Steele, and as we go into this holiday season, I want to let our supporters know, and that's why we're doing this very special broadcast this week. Typically, it's a slow time for AE 9/11 Truth and the 9/11 Truth movement around the holidays because everybody is so focused on doing their shopping and getting with the family and all of that. But there are some exciting developments taking place right now. They're going to have major implications for our cause, for this movement we care so much about. And it is an honor tonight. We're going to be joined by former Congressman Curt Weldon to talk about that. We're also going to be joined by some of our regulars. So let's just jump right in and start introducing them. Our first guest is Raul Angulo. He's the chairman of the board for AE 9/11 Truth. He graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and served in the U.S. Army Special Forces, where he was trained in the use of explosives. He became a licensed civil engineer in California, and his 50 years of engineering experience has included designing and testing blast-hardened missile launch facilities, U.S. naval explosive containers, harbor terminal facilities, earth foundation systems, and hydraulic systems. In addition, he's owned 3 construction companies and taught engineering subjects to high school students. He is going to be joined by Dr. Leroy Halsey, who is a professor emeritus at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, where he taught structural engineering for a very long time. Before coming to the university, he owned and ran 3 high-tech engineering research corporations. He also taught at the University of Missouri-Rolla and North Carolina State University. And as this audience knows, he authored the study called A Structural Reevaluation of the Collapse of World Trade Center 7, which concluded that for the building to have fallen the way it did, that building right there, all the steel support columns would have had to have failed at virtually the same instant. And as I mentioned, they are going to be joined by Congressman Curt Weldon. As I mentioned, he's a former congressman who served as a Republican member of the U.S. House of Representatives from 1987 to 2007, representing the 7th District of Pennsylvania. He was the vice chair of the Armed Services Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee. He was also the co-chair of the Duma Congress Study Group, the official interparliamentary relationship between the United States and Russia. He was vocal about his questions surrounding the intelligence aspects of 9/11 early, particularly in the matter of able danger, which we'll get into sometime later in this program. He also has a rich background in firefighting, which we'll be talking about, and it's an honor to have him joining us on the show today. Gentlemen, welcome to 9/11 Free Fall.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. It's a special week here during this holiday week, and for us, it's not because of the holiday, it's because of what is taking place. So, Congressman, with the assistance of our team and others in the 9/11 Truth movement, you're taking some unprecedented steps towards a real investigation of 9/11, which it deserved from day one, and which we feel that we did not get. So please share with our audience what is going on behind the scenes and what you will be pursuing in the next month as the Trump administration prepares to take office.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I come at this from a unique perspective. My primary the aspect of my life and career has been firefighting. As you mentioned, I was a lifelong firefighter, fire chief. I handled the largest fire in America in 1975 when 2 ships collided at my port. I wrote a book about it and testified before Congress when I was in my 20s. When I went to Congress, I organized the Fire Caucus, which became and remains the largest in the Congress with 370 members of the House and the Senate. My co-chairs were Biden, Hoyer, McCain, Gore, and I went to all 50 states and basically convinced the fire service that it had to get involved if it was going to basically get any response from the officials in Washington. And in doing that, I also went to all the disasters. I was at Hurricane Katrina days after the hurricane, same with Hurricane Andrew, Loma Prieta earthquake, Northridge earthquake, the wildland fires in California, the Murrah building bombing. And I was at the World Trade Center in 93. I was invited by the fire marshal from New York and the fire commissioner, Howard Safer, and spent the day at Ground Zero. And that's when I first met Ray Downey, who became one of my close friends. The fire commissioner assigned ATF and DEA to take me through the bombed out parking garage, which I did. And my background, by the way, is not just firefighting. I worked for the largest insurance company in North America for 18 years, where I ran their property casualty risk management program, training fire protection engineers and arson investigators. And I have obviously been through many NFPA programs, NFPA 101 and the other life safety programs. I'm not an engineer, so I do not profess to know, have an expertise in structural engineering, but I certainly am aware of the building designs and engine construction considerations in the life safety code. As a result of the 93 attack, I wrote legislation to create the Gilmore Commission. Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore was the chair of that commission. And the purpose of the commission was to investigate with the New York Fire Department the 93 attack and make recommendations to prevent another attack similar to the 93 attack. That commission, which Ray Downey was a member of, and one of my local fire chiefs from Pennsylvania, Bill Genoway, was a member of, issued 5 reports before the World Trade Center attack in 93. Most of the recommendations of the Gilmore Commission were ignored by the bureaucracy, which happens with the federal government all the time. But at the same time that was going on, I was the chairman of the Oversight Committee for All Military Research. And so I was responsible for the services standing up their information dominance centers. Each of the services were standing up capability to deal with cyber threats. The Army's program was at Fort Belvoir, at their Land Information Warfare Assessment Center. I was funding it. And I was intrigued by their capability to do more understanding of emerging threats than what the CIA was doing or the other agencies. So 2 years before 9/11, I suggested that we create a fusion center for all 33 classified systems of the federal government. And on November the 2nd of 1999, I hosted a meeting in my office with the Deputy Secretary of Defense, John Hamre, the Deputy Director of the CIA and the FBI. And Hamre said he would support the program. FBI said they were supportive. I said I would get it funded. And the CIA said we don't need it. What we found out when 9/11 happened, and I got the call from the analyst at Fort Belvoir, was that they had been working on a top secret program called Able Danger. Able Danger was created by General Hugh Shelton, commander of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And they had one focus, to focus on Al-Qaeda. And they had produced charts. I have the only copies of those charts now that are available. And those charts show every Al-Qaeda cell in the world, and they show the 5 key cells, including the one in New York. They identified Muhammad Atta as a part of the New York cell a year before 9/11, and they could not transfer that information to the Justice Department. When I came out with this report, Louis Freeh, the FBI director, wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed about my report and went on Good Morning America and said if the FBI would have had the information, we could have stopped 9/11 from occurring. I always felt responsible from the standpoint of the intelligence that we had that 9/11 should never have happened. And I obviously very heavily blamed the CIA. I was in a position to do something about that. And the CIA, when I wrote my book in 2005, Jim Woolsey endorsed my book. And that's when I talked about what they did with bin Laden after 9/11. But I never got into the structural part of 9/11 because I'm not an engineer. I did go up to the Trade Center on the first Amtrak train running after the attack. The New York Fire Commissioner called me and said, Congressman, can you come to Ground Zero? I said, well, as soon as I can get up there. I said, right now the Capitol's under an attack. This was after the 9/11 team came over and gave me the charts on 9/11, showing me what they had. I took those charts down to the White House and I rolled them out on the desk of Steve Hadley, who was the deputy to Condoleezza Rice, security advisor. And he said to me, where did you get these charts from, Congressman? And I had 2 members with me at the same time, Chris Shays and Dan Burton. I said, I got them from the team that I told you when you came into office we needed to fuse all of our intelligence capabilities together, and you didn't listen to me. He said, I've got to show these charts to the man. He said, the man? I said, the man? He said, yes. I said, you mean the president? He said, yes. I said, you mean the president is not aware of all these Al-Qaeda cells we've identified by name worldwide? And I'm talking about hundreds of cells. He said, no. They took the charts. I went back to my office and communicated with the New York Fire Department. And on the first Amtrak train going up, I was one of the only people on the train. I took a staffer with me. They met me at the station in New York and took me down to Ground Zero. I spent the day at Ground Zero with the New York Fire Department, walking through the remains, and they were Ray Downey's two sons looking for their dad because they're both firefighters. In fact, they're still with the fire department. One is a deputy chief in New York. The other runs the training department for the New York Fire Department. Because Ray Downey on 9/11 was the chief of all rescue. He was vaporized when the towers came down. I felt personally responsible because I had information that if the CIA would not have blocked it, the FBI could have stopped the attack from occurring. Now, I was there on ground. I saw all the sites. I walked the perimeter. I was down there in all the twisted wreckage and sifting through the piles of debris all over the place. And I was sick as I interacted with the firefighters and so forth. I was aware of issues involving the buildings, but I never really focused on that because my focus was on what we could have done to prevent the attack from the first place. I was aware that there were studies that were being done about why and how the buildings collapsed. As a firefighter, I couldn't believe that those buildings would come down that quick. As someone who had been to many fires myself, it amazed me. But again, I'm not a structural engineer. I didn't question that. It wasn't until recently, as I started to say that I want to have a new 9/11 commission be a part of this fire rescue program that I put together for President Trump. I actually put it together when Biden was in office and briefed the White House a year and a half ago, but they didn't respond. That I said, you know what, we've got to have a whole relook at 9/11. And I reached out to people that are associates of yours, and I said, let me understand what's going on with the studies of the buildings. I've been aware of your group, but I've never been briefed on your work. One thing you have to understand about Congress and politics. Congress does not operate by logic. Now, you're architects and engineers, and I'm going to give you a story, a real story. My first term in Congress, I'm sitting in the the Longworth office building, a 7-story building across the street from the Capitol, where 1/3 of the U.S. Congress houses its offices, where we meet with blind people, handicapped people, people that cannot operate on their own. At 7 o'clock at night in my first term, I smelled smoke. I got up out of my chair. I walked in the hallway. I told my staff there's something on fire. I looked up the hallway, and Speaker of the House, Jim Wright's office, was on fire. I ran up to the door, felt the door to make sure the fire wasn't right there, as I would have done as a firefighter. I kicked the door open, and I got down on my hands and knees and crawled in to make sure there were no staff that were trapped in the suite of offices or perhaps had passed out. I could see the fire raging in the kitchen area, which I later found out was the kitchen. I yelled out to my staffer, the one staffer that was in my office, John McNichol. I said, John, go get me some portable fire extinguishers. I'll try to contain this because I can't see any people in here. The smoke was billowing down from the ceiling of the roof of the Speaker's office. He came back with 5 extinguishers. 3 of them weren't charged. I said, John, go back to the hose station down the hallway. Give me the 1.5-inch pre-connect hose. Bring me the nozzle and the hose. And when I yell to you, turn the valve, and I'll use that to control the fire. He came back to me and said, Curt, there's no hose in the hose station. There was nothing I could do as a firefighter. So I backed out of the office, closed the door, and the Capitol Hill police were running through the building yelling, fire, get out. Now, you're architects and engineers. This is a 7-story building housing the leaders of our country that had no sprinklers, no detectors, no alarm system. None. In violation of the life safety code and every building and fire code in America. When the fire chief from D.C. arrived, my good friend Ray Alford, I said, Chief, you've got a working fire on the 2nd floor. It's in the corner office. It's in the kitchen. You're going to have to lay lines in. But I'm sure you pre-planned the building. And the chief said to me, we've never been allowed to pre-plan these buildings. You need to understand a basic tenet of the federal government. It doesn't work by logic. You wonder why you haven't been able to get your message across. You have 535 members of Congress working in 6 office buildings that were in violation of every building and fire code in every city in America. There were fire traps. The elevator stopped at the fire floor. No automatic recall. The stair towers were all open. They weren't enclosed. No alarm system. No manual pull station. 7 stories above ground, 4 stories below ground. How can you expect those people to understand the nuances of a building collapse? This is where they were working for all of their careers. And there's finally, the fire department put the fire out, did a significant amount of damage. I have photographs. It's probably $500,000 of damage in the speaker suite. And I went outside all sooty. The cameras put a microphone in my face. And I said, these buildings are fire trapped. Nobody should be allowed in here. And the architect of the Capitol went on national TV and said, well, they're made out of concrete. They don't burn. And I said publicly, he's a jackass. And I'm in my first term as a congressman. And the architect of the U.S. Capitol went on national TV and said, these buildings are made out of concrete. They can't burn. That's the problem you have. So that night I went to my apartment. I got a call on my cell phone. It was the Speaker's chief of staff. And he said, Congressman, the Speaker wanted me to thank you for what you did and making sure our staff was out and in trying to put the fire out. But you're going to be mobbed by the media tomorrow. I said, well, that's the way it goes. He said, you're not going to blame the Speaker, are you? I said, I don't even know the Speaker. I'm a Republican. He's a Democrat. He doesn't know me. I'm a freshman. I said, I'm not going to blame the Speaker, but I want these buildings retrofitted. I want these systems upgraded. He said, the Speaker will do whatever you want. The next day, I offered a privilege resolution on the floor of the House. It takes precedent over all other legislation. The Speaker called upon me, and he said, I know what the gentleman's rising for, and I accept the gentleman's recommendation. They appointed a 4-person panel, and we called for the retrofit of every building on Capitol Hill, all 6 office buildings and the U.S. Capitol. So as architects and engineers, the first thing I would say to you, and I say this to NFPA, and I have a lot of disdain for NFPA right now. They did nothing to protect the Capitol of the United States. Where were their voices when these buildings were fire traps? And when 9/11 happened, we wondered why people didn't respond. The elected officials don't understand. My job as a member of Congress for 20 years was to get the fire service to shake the necks of every elected official to pay attention. And that's what we did. When I couldn't get them to respond to the lack of interoperable communications as a result of the Murrah building bombing out in Oklahoma City or the First World Trade Center, I surrounded the Capitol building with 300 fire trucks. And I put ladder trucks in the parking lot with a flag attached and a trailer with a microphone. And I had the fire trucks put their air horns and sirens on at noon, and all the staff were now in the buildings like rats. And a politician could smell a microphone a mile away, so they all ran over and jumped up on the platform with Steny Hoyer and I. He was my co-chair. And they said, what are we here for? They said, we're here to demand an interoperable communication system because like at the World Trade Center in 93, we can't talk to one another. Some are on high band, some are on low band, some are digital, some are analog. So the basic message that I had to fight for 20 years was that the Congress just doesn't understand. You've had to fight that in telling your story, and I'm trying to give you the message as to why you haven't gotten the response that you shouldn't have gotten. You're not going to get the response through logic. You've got to make the message. Look, there are definitely things that happened at 9/11 that are criminal. I know what happened intelligence-wise, and I have the book, Able Danger, the manuscript. I hand-delivered a copy to the chief of the New York City Fire Department, my friend John Esposito, last July. I sat in his office for 2 hours, and I handed him the draft manuscript, and I signed it. I said, this is in honor of Ray Downey. That manuscript tells the story of how our intelligence agency blocked the intelligence that could have allowed us to prevent the attack. What I want to do now is empower you all to tell your story about the buildings. But that's not just going to be heard by sitting back at some coffee clash or at some social event and expecting a congressperson or a staffer to listen. You're going to have to make some noise. You're going to have to raise some cane, and you're going to have to shake the country. Now, I paid the price for that. I was next in line to chair of the Armed Services Committee. And in 2006, my last election, FBI agents from D.C. raided my daughter's house. They never talked to my daughter, ever. The goal was to disrupt my election. I lost that election. And 3 months later, George Bush, the father, did a 3-minute tribute to me in front of 2,000 leaders in Washington. They never talked to my daughter. But I offended the deep state. And that's the problem and the battle you're going to have to fight. You're not dealing with ordinary people here. You're dealing with sinister people who put together plans to harm America and the world. I saw it, I lived it, and I paid the price. My daughter's life was ruined because they raided her house and never talked to her. Ever! No one ever talked to her. No one called her in. All it was about was raiding her house, making it look like she had done something wrong. And I'm not going to let that lie. The worst they can do to me is kill me. And I'm not some conspiracy theorist. My partners today are a federal judge and the former director of the FBI and the former deputy director of the FBI. And so I reached out to Biden. I've known Biden his whole career. He traveled with me overseas. He was my co-chairman of the Fire Caucus the whole time. His firefighters are my firefighters. They all know me. And he knows that. I went to the Biden White House a year and a half ago with a 7-point plan to empower the firefighters in America. And they listened, an hour and a half meeting. Biden wasn't there, but they didn't brief Biden. Nothing happened. So in August, I briefed Donald Trump's team. They responded. We almost set up a program. I didn't want it to be partisan. I've never met Donald Trump. But I want the truth to come out, and I want the firefighters to get the respect they deserve. There's no group of people more highly respected in America than firefighters. In every poll, they're at 98%. There are 30,000 fire departments in America, 50,000 fire stations. The bulk of them are volunteers, as I was. My goal is to give them the support they need and to have a White House conference next year in the first quarter on firefighters and EMS. That's never happened before. In that conference, we will lay out 7 task forces of important items that need to be addressed to support them, not after they die. I don't want to, after they die, that's important, but that's not what it's about. It's about before they die. And the 8th task force I want is a revisit to 9/11. And I will not have it run by bureaucrats. I will not have it run by federal agency personnel who are beholden to politicians of either party. I will not stand for that. And the fire service won't either. So the goal is to have an 8th task force appointed by the President of the United States to revisit the 9/11 Commission. There are so many things that I can point out that were lies. The 9/11 Commission, in my opinion, was a cover-up. The executive director of the commission appointed, first of all, neither Bush nor Clinton wanted the commission. Congress forced the commission. So the Republicans put Zelikow in charge. The Democrats put Jamie Gorelick in charge. They were the 2 people that drove the report of the commission. I don't know about the aspect of the buildings. I can tell you, though, on the tone of what the report was. In a podcast that I did, which your viewers can turn to, it's called Box Alarm 2, Awakening the Sleeping Giant, which I broadcast at 9/11 this past September. I interview Governor Jim Gilmore from Virginia, the governor of the state of Virginia, who was the chairman of the Gilmore Commission. And he verifies what I'm going to tell you. The second part of the interview was with Tony Shaffer, career lieutenant colonel in the Army, whose career was ruined because he told the truth about what we knew before 9/11. And the third 20 minutes was from the chair of the 9/11 families, Terry from Florida. But I want you to know the story. The 9/11 Commission lied. When Tony Shaffer, after his career was ruined and I defended him, that's what I was doing while you were investigating the buildings. They tried to ruin his life, and I defended him and went to the wall for him. He decided he was going to, and he was deployed over in Afghanistan after 9/11. And Gorelick and Zelikow went through Afghanistan. And the word went out to the military that if anyone in the military had any information about pre-9/11, they should let the commanding officer know so they could be interviewed by Zelikow, the 9/11 Commission. Tony Shaffer said, I was a part of a top secret team. That's Able Danger. He met with Zelikow in Afghanistan. They exchanged cards. Tony told him what he knew pre-9/11. Zelikow gave him his card and said, we have to meet when we get back to Washington. When Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer returned to Washington, his office was locked. All of his 9/11 files were gone. His security clearances were removed. They tried to destroy the man, and I defended him because of what Tony Schaefer and Scott Philpott and Eileen Pricer, the other 9/11 team members, knew pre-9/11. Tony suffered through a lot. His family suffered a lot. He decided to write his memoirs. So Tony wrote his memoirs called Dark Heart. The book was being published with the approval of his commanding officer in the Army Reserves. And then the deep state found out about the book. They put a cease and desist order into Tony Schaefer to stop the book Dark Heart. It was already being published. As you'll hear on my podcast from Tony himself, it was too late to stop the book. So our government used taxpayer money and bought all 10,000 copies of the first edition of Dark Heart to destroy the book. Tony published the redacted version. We have the redacted version and the unredacted version. And you know what they wanted redacted? The fact that he had briefed Zelikow. It wasn't some top secret information. It was that he had briefed the head of the 9/11 Commission. It's outrageous. And then my one more fact I want to bring out to you to show you my outrage. It's not just Tony Schaefer and the Able Danger team. The 9/11 Commission gives no word about how this could have been prevented in advance of what you all focus on, the building collapses, which I'm anxious to learn about. So a book that you all also read is called Horse Soldiers, written about our commanding general of our special forces on horseback, General Keith Lambert. I never met General Lambert. The book was a New York Times bestseller and became the focus of a film. If you go to that book and go to page 27, the publisher of the book, the writer of the book, interviews General Lambert and says, General, you were on horseback in Asia when 9/11 happened. What were your feelings when 9/11 happened? And this is what the general says. Within seconds, I knew who had done the attack. And I knew it involved a man named Muhammad Atta because I had been briefed on an Army intelligence program. None of that's in the 9/11 Commission report. None of it. The 9/11 Commission report is a joke. It's a joke. I can tell you from my standpoint, from Intel, there's no question about it. What I want to do is empower you, because you're the experts on buildings, to tell the story of what really happened with Building 7, as well as other buildings, the two main tower buildings. When I watched the film that was shown to me, it was produced in 2020 by your team members, and I saw that New York firefighter enter floor 78 of the tower and report back verbally that he saw 2 fires and he could handle them. And 5 minutes later, the building collapses. I said, wait a minute. This is outrageous. I can't believe that we haven't investigated this before now. So I'm here to tell you, I'm burning mad. I'm burning mad because this is who I am. Nobody's paying me for anything. I don't have any consulting contracts. I don't have any fear. The worst they can do to me is kill me. So I applaud you for your work. And I'm here to say I'm going to help you understand how to tell your story.
And we appreciate it, Congressman, and it is just amazing listening to you speak. We have been doing outreach to members of Congress for years, very direct, polite, but direct confrontations on very specific facts, and what you describe in terms of the logic, sometimes the cognitive abilities of some of these people that we encounter has been our experience as well. And so what you're talking about right now is going right directly to the President of the United States, setting up this presidential commission. And when I first heard talk of this, I nearly fell out of my chair, because this is what we've been working for a number of years. I just want to turn to Roland and then Leroy. Our audience, of course, is very aware of your work within the 9/11 Truth movement and everything that you have done. Beginning again with Roland, I'd just like to get your reaction to what you were hearing and the prospect that that we could possibly have this new investigation, this presidential commission?
Well, Congressman, I'm overwhelmed by your story. We, of course, heard of Able Danger. It did make the news. We knew that there was intelligence that had been suppressed. We didn't know the whole backstory as you're describing it to us, but your experience and your passion in this matter is central to what we've been looking for all these years. We're just engineers. We're dealing with the reality of what we know about those buildings, and we know that the story that the government told us through the NIST reports about how those buildings came down is absolutely not true. Can't be true. It violates the laws of physics. It violates everything that we know, that we've discovered through our examination of the evidence. And we know that that those stories are a lie, frankly. And the fact that we have been unable to break through on any political level, because we knew that ultimately this was going to have to come out in politics. We're not politicians. We're engineers. We study and we examine and we design. And those buildings, all three of them, failed under design conditions. That is, they were designed to withstand aircraft impacts, and they were designed to withstand office fires. So the fact that they came down is an anomaly that has to be explained. And like you, we have found that the heads of our professional organizations, the engineering associations, have turned a blind eye to this evidence and refused to respond to legitimate inquiries and scientific procedures that the engineering profession has been built upon for hundreds, thousands of years. When we have problems with a failure, we have to understand that failure, and we have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And in this case, that failure was catastrophic for the whole world. Thousands of people died, millions of people were affected, and we're still suffering the consequences of that catastrophic experience. And we don't understand why, because we've been blocked from explaining what happened to the public. The American public does not understand. We've been unjustly accused of being conspiracy theorists. We've been so frustrated in our efforts to bring this to the public and met with a wall of silence from primarily within our engineering organizations. You have to understand that the NIST report, they point to our professional organizations and they say, well, the professional engineering organizations are on board with this, so therefore there's no need for us to reopen any kind of investigation. We have the official approval. So we're fighting a battle within our profession, and we're fighting a political battle to get this information outside of our profession as well. So the fact that you have come along through the intermediary of the fire department personnel, and we have been able to now join these two efforts, I think with your experience and with our information, we are going to be able to break through if we can find anybody in the administration that will listen to what we have to say. So we are extremely hopeful, extremely grateful for you for having the courage to stand up to all the forces that you've been subjected to and what you've seen happen to other people, including your own family. Sir, you're a godsend for us. And we're going to do everything we can to present as clear and as unequivocal a picture of what happened to those buildings so that people can understand why the official story has no credibility and the role that our professional leadership played in that deception. So we're ready to go forward, sir. We have compiled this information over the past 16 years. I'm going to introduce Professor Halsey now because when we needed a gold-plated explanation for our analysis, we had to go to somebody like Professor Halsey. And Professor Halsey, again, was the one person we went to we went to academic institutions around the country and around the world and asked for somebody to step up and do this study for us. He was the only person that did so. This man put his reputation on the line, put his credibility on the line, and knew that he was going to walk into a very high intensity situation politically, and he was willing to do that. And he has presented this report that he came up with, that he published, we've asked for peer reviews, professional reviews, public reviews. Nobody has been able to contest his findings because his methodology is ironclad. It follows the book. It does everything that we know we need to do as engineers to examine a problem and come up with a proposed theory to explain what happened. And his proposal has met the test. Nobody has challenged it. We've taken it around the country. We've presented his findings and our findings to more than 1,000 engineers, people that are practicing every day. We have not found one engineer that disagrees with us. And they all disagree with the position that our leadership has taken. So we're in the same boat in the engineering field that you have found yourself in the firefighting field. And we're going to now put these things together. And I think we're going to break through and make a real contribution to our understanding of what happened that day. So Professor Halsey, if you'd like to speak to your experiences, please do.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you so much for the pain and everything that you've gone through. It's just unbelievable that this country was allowing this kind of stuff to go forth. I have to say that when I was approached to do this study, I turned them down. I was asked again, I turned them down. I was asked again, and I said, you know what? I've lived a long life. If they come out and kill me, it's no big deal. I need to do what is the right thing. I didn't know anything about Building 7 before we started. It took me about a week to go and make a presentation in New York to say, listen, it was not a fire that brought this building down. It only took me a few days to determine that. I could not believe that the NIST study was made based upon faulty information. I couldn't believe that they had no idea anything about heating, fires, and structure, any of that. None of it made any sense. So I said, I told my students, I had two PhD students working with me, and I said, I do not want you to read anything that's in the news. I will ask you every morning, tell me what you studied, tell me what you did. This has to be pure science all the way. Everything I did was based upon science, not based upon I think, based upon ideas that are faulty. No, that is not acceptable. What is acceptable is what did that building undergo to come down as it did. For God's sake, there were people on the 8th floor that day, as I understand it anyway, from a firefighter who called me and said, hey, Leroy, would you have any time to talk? This was after the report was out. And I said, sure. So I called him, and we were on the phone for about 4 hours. And he was telling me that, there was a guy in there measuring the amount of movement on that building while he was in there. And I said, who was that building? Do firefighters do that? Well, they do on the outside perimeter or something like that. But it was my understanding, no. So who was paying this person to make the measurements? And then the fire marshal, I understand, said, listen, let's vacate quickly and go down on the corner there where there's two streets come together. And they were in that facility, as I understand it, when the building came down. Now, have to go back and say, okay, what was really going on that day in that building for it to come down the way it did? It wasn't a fire, for God's sake. It wasn't anywhere close to being a fire. It didn't even do anything that the NIST was saying. Everything they said was false. How could engineers even do that? It doesn't make any sense. I couldn't believe. Of course, I was a professor. I should probably know a little bit about what people should know and not know, but goodness gracious. I have to say something, though, in behalf of the university. The university didn't say, Leroy, you can't do this. Lots of universities, I'm sure, said no because they were afraid they were going to lose funding. Ours didn't do that. Matter of fact, they complimented me for taking on a study like this. At the end of the day, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You deserve a lot of pride. I spent a week in Alaska with Don Young and Frank Murkowski after the Exxon Valdez. And we went up there because of the damage done to your state. And the people we met in Alaska were amazing. We met your academics. I think some of them were from your university. And from that time on, that was early in my career, I was always amazed that Alaska, this state up far away from us, had so much talent and credibility. And I told Don Young that until he passed away just a few years ago. And Don stayed in the Congress. He was the dean of the entire House. And I told Frank Murkowski that. And as you know, Frank Murkowski's daughter is your senator now. I think you have a position of stature now because you did what no one else would do. Based on pure science, you did an analysis and you told the story. The question now is getting that story out so that people can review it. You didn't do it as a conspiracy theorist. And see, that's what the intel agency tries to do all the time. They're the ones putting out the conspiracy theories because then they can say, you're the conspirator. I'm not stupid. I understand that game. And remember, George Bush, when you see the endorsement he did for me, the father, George H.W. Bush, 3 months after I left Congress, in front of 2,000 people, he said, Congressman Weldon, you're the kind of leader this country needs. George Bush was not just the former president. He was the former head of the CIA. Now, if I were some kind of conspiracy theorist, the former head of the CIA would not have come out and said that in front of 2,000 people. We need to now let you have the ability to tell your story as scientists. It gets back to what I said earlier. Politicians are driven in many different ways. First of all, they want to get reelected, and that's in both parties. And they don't always understand, as I told you in my first term, when I found that we were working in buildings that you would have laughed at as architects and engineers because they were out of compliance with every building and fire code in the country. I applaud you for your work. Now the task is taking your work and your people and having them use their backbone and spines to tell the story to the rest of the nation and the country. And here's your key. And I gave the keynote speech in California last year to the California fire chiefs. There were about 600 of them there. And this is what I said to them. I said, stop sucking up the politicians. The political parties today are around 45% supportive, both sides. The police are around 50 to 55%. I'm a big supporter of police. That's why I ran for office. My hometown was headquarters of a motorcycle gang. But there are a lot of people that don't like the police and want to defund them. The military, the same. In every poll, in every state, firefighters and EMS are 98%. We need the firefighters in America, the paid and volunteer firefighters, to tell your story. No member of Congress will back down to them. When I had those 300 fire trucks circle the Capitol, they responded. When we decided to do a grant program in 2000 for firefighters, President Clinton said, I'm not going to fund any new programs, and I don't like Congressman Weldon either, so we're not going to do it. I didn't need Clinton. I attached the grant program as an amendment to the defense bill. When the defense bill became law, the fire grant program became law. And then Bush came in, young Bush. He didn't fund the program. I called his budget director down to my office, and I had 70 members of Congress stuffed in my office. He carried a portable fire extinguisher in with him. He said, I'm going to need this. I said, that's right. That year, we got the first $100 million for the fire grant program. Neither president supported it. Neither. We had the Congress behind us. The Fire Grant Program and the SAFER program, both of which I wrote, have appropriated $18 billion for firefighters over the last 20 years. What we have a chance now for is very unique. You have a leader that's been elected who's not beholden to the deep state. He's not beholden to the Beltway crowd. He's willing to stand up, and the appointments he's making to positions like Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth, they're willing to stand up for what's right. What we have to do with you is tell the story. We have to have the facts in place, we have to have the information, and then we have to have the guts. The guts to stand up and say, this is our country, and we're not going to let some nameless, faceless scumbag leave this country worse off because they did something to us that killed 343 firefighters when 9/11 happened instantly, and killed 3,000 people and caused thousands and thousands of deaths around the world. That's not going to stand. That's not America. So you are the patriots. You're the American patriots 250 years after the country was founded. And I applaud you for your work. And what I'm telling you is I'm going to help you. I'm going to help empower you. I'm going to help you get your story out. And I'm going to help you get the momentum and the movement you need from the people who really can get every leader in the country to pay attention. And they're the men and women of the fire service. And you need to focus on them. Every fire effort in the country ought to be listening to what you have to say. Every conference, every workshop, the chiefs, the volunteers, and I know NFPA needs to be shaken up. You know, and I was on an FPA committee when I worked for an insurance company. Where are they? They're supposed to be writing standards. Well, hell, this is the most important standards process in the country because of the deaths of firefighters. Where have they been? And why aren't they doing more? We need to ask that question because I'm sure a lot of your members are a part of the NFPA organization.
Couple of things I'd like to say that, it breaks my heart that our firefighters went through so much pain and anguish and losing family members and losing their friends. That's why I was reaching out sometime back a couple of years ago and saying I'd like to come to New York and talk to the firefighters if they would be willing to talk, because I want the world to understand what they went through and the loss of their families and the loss of their friends. And to this day, I'm not happy about the fact that they haven't been given the attention that need to be given to them. They were putting their lives on the line for us. For God's sake, there's nothing better than that. So when I was approached, I felt like God's asking me to make a difference. I intend to do that. Whatever it takes for me, I will do that. At this point, I told the true story. It was based on pure science. I will try to capitalize on that as much as I can to make people understand that that's really what happened and that building was all about a lie. And matter of fact, so were the other two buildings. I haven't studied them, but there is studies starting to happen out there. Some people maybe should be moving forward. I don't know if they're willing to do it. There's issues that some people are still putting, shall we say, gates in the way. But at the end of the day, I think it's worth it to try to get everything out there. You would not believe how many families come up and see me and say, "Hey, thank you so much." Because there's a movie out and there's stuff that trying to get true stories out to the public. The public actually does appreciate some of those things. By the way, this was not.
Film. Were you all involved with producing that? The one that I was given the chance to look at. Were you all involved in the because your Alaskan study was referenced throughout that?
We made the film 7 and the Calling Out Bravo 7. I'm not sure which one you watched. That was done by a gentleman out in England, and I don't know if he's affiliated with them, but he's kind of more involved with Firefighters for 9/11 Truth. But we produced the film 7, which featured Dr. Halsey and other engineers talking about that study.
That needs to be, every member of Congress needs to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. Now, I want to focus on this because, of course, we've got this opportunity coming in with a new president a person who our audience is just as divided on as the rest of the country on their feelings and sentiments about Donald Trump. Of course, we're apolitical. We will work with anybody, no matter what political party they're affiliated with. In fact, we interviewed Jill Stein at our anniversary event from the Green Party, who calls for a new investigation as well. This is a bipartisan issue. You know, when 3,000 people die suddenly in one day when they shouldn't have, when those buildings should have continued to stand, and not to mention that people got sick, not because airplanes crashed into buildings, but because they came down. So 9/11 is happening for them every single day, that they continue to struggle to walk up the stairs and stop and breathe while they do that. You know, that is an issue that transcends politics. What you've mentioned it before. You said that Trump is not beholden to the deep state. What gives you confidence that there's a chance that he may take this up, and also help our audience understand the process moving forward? Is this dependent on whether Donald Trump is convinced and then he gives the word and this commission happens?
Well, I would say this to you, having served 20 years in the Congress, I do not see the Congress empowering another 9/11 commission on its own. Just not going to happen. There are too many ways to get the members of Congress, and many of them are my friends that I served with. If the President of the United States establishes what I call for, which is a White House conference on firefighters and EMS, it's never happened before. And he does that in the first quarter of next year, which I have every reason to believe he will do. There will be 7 task forces announced that the fire service will love, and they're aware of them. I've briefed them, and they're not partisan at all. The 8th initiative is a separate request to have a revisit of 9/11. I do not want it to be run by bureaucrats. I do not want it to be run by NIST. And let me say, when I was on the Science Committee in the House, I was an overseer of NIST. And I'm not here to disparage any one person, but I know the pressure that can be brought to bear on any federal agency by the party in power. If there's a new commission, I want it to be run by people who, one, have a loyalty to the people that were impacted, two, have the credibility of people like your own group that are recognized architects and engineers, and your reputation in the military world for the work that you did on behalf of our country in dealing with some very difficult technology challenges relative to our systems. That's what I want to be on this commission, and let them come to the conclusions based on science and their best estimates of what happened and what the real report. I am guarantee you, I am 100% certain that what happened we do not know right now, both in the intelligence and on the buildings. I know it on the intelligence side without any hesitation. And after watching the film and being a firefighter and seeing Building 7 collapse the way that I saw, it just looked like a prearranged demolition to me, as opposed to a fire. I didn't see any fire at all in Building 7. And I know people that were in that building at the time. The officers were in that building, but were not in there when the actual building came down. So I think the key thing is, how do you get what you know and what you have to be impacted? And I'll help you do that. I'll help you get the attention of the Congress individually. I'll tell you, in Alaska, Senator Murkowski is critical. And by the way, she's a co-chair of the Fire Caucus right now. And we should have a private meeting with her and discuss this. Now, the problem you have with politicians is when you get in this area, you're taking on the system. There are forces that don't want this to be looked at for a multitude of reasons. I don't want to hurt our country. I'm a loyal, patriotic American, the youngest of 9 kids. 8 brothers and sisters have served in every branch of the military. I'm a very patriotic American. But I will not stand for anonymous scumbags to do things that harm our people and get away with it. Not going to happen. We have a chance now. And again, I've never met Donald Trump, but I know what's happened to him, and I understand the attempts made against him. You all can see that yourselves. And I, based upon what my feel is and the people he's nominating for positions, we have the best opportunity you'll ever have to get the answers that you want about the buildings and about what really happened pre and on 9/11. And I'll help you do that.
That's right. And I know you have connections there. That's why we are so hopeful about this effort. And I mean, the case for the controlled demolitions of these buildings, it's so simple that a person doesn't even have to be an engineer to grasp it. I mean, when NIST is telling you, oh, the collapse was initiated because there were fires in a certain area of the building, and then you can look at the photographic evidence and see that those fires are burned out. There's a problem there. They don't have their initiating event. They don't have a final report. There's so many problems like that throughout the stories that NIST gave us about Building 7, about the Twin Towers. I say this all the time. I know this was a controlled demolition, and I think an honest evaluation of all the facts, no matter where they lead, will lead to that end. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity that we have been waiting for a very long time, and so many of you out there have stood with us for so long. I ask you to stand with us more. Yes, we're not as shiny as we were when we first came out of the dock here, and we got some bullet holes metaphorically shot through us and all of this, but we believe that we can get you to the end here. And your participation is going to be absolutely critical, not just through donating and financial support, but it's going to be all hands on deck, because we know the mainstream media is not going to cooperate. In fact, I can see the mainstream media trying to do everything they can, even as all of these facts are going to be revealed at this commission. If it happens, they're going to try to ignore it, focus on some silly wedge issue. Maybe the Sharks will start attacking again or something, and they'll focus on that. But we're going to need you to also be the media. Take this interview that you are watching and write an article about it. If you are a writer on your various blogs, places like Op-Ed News is one that I use. I'm sure there's several others that I don't know about. Call your radio stations, call your congressman just to let them know that this is going on. Do everything you can to be the media, just like we were at the beginning of the 9/11 Truth Movement. I'm certainly going to be trying to pull any connections that I have made over the years to get Congressman Weldon out there and our organization out there, letting them know that this effort is taking place. These things are being said by very prominent members of our government, and we just need all hands on deck, every effort that you can make. Roland, to conclude today, can you express your own thoughts on those sentiments I just expressed, how our supporters can help us out moving forward, and basically just your thoughts on the future ahead for AE 9/11 Truth?
We need to understand that this is a unique and probably one-time only opportunity that we are faced with now. And we have been preparing for this opportunity for the last, since 2006. We've been putting our story together very methodically. Thousands of people literally have given us little pieces of the puzzle that we have put together, and we now have a very good picture of what we know happened that day. And now through God's grace, we've come across the person and the group that we need to focus with, the firefighters who have the political credibility and the backing of the American people. As Congressman Weldon points out, they got a 98% approval rating. Nobody is going to go against the firefighters.
Nope. No one.
No one's going to go against them. So we have now an opportunity where they're going to provide, they're going to block, they're going to go into the line, and we're going to carry our message.
Right.
And our message is consistent with what they know and what they're willing to stand up for. And together, we are going to have a force that we have not had before. And we don't know if this is ever going to come again. The fact that Trump is made an enemy of the deep state, apparently, they seem to hate him. He has very little regard for them as a result. And therefore, this presents an opportunity for us. And we can see already, if you look at what's going on around the world, the fact that Trump was elected is having political ramifications around the world, in Europe, in the Far East, in the Middle East. There's a movement building here. This is an opportunity for us to confront what happened on 9/11 that set the stage for the last 25 years. And we need to seize this opportunity no matter what.
Well said. You are exactly 100% correct. Everyone listening to your podcast needs to understand they have to play a role. You won't have this opportunity again. You've done your legwork. You've done your homework. I've done my legwork and my homework. In fact, we're getting results. Just 2 weeks ago, Judicial Watch revealed that the Department of Defense, after 19 years, responded to a FOIA about Able Danger. It took them 19 years. I think they're now wanting to get ahead of the curve. They're acknowledging Able Danger, and that Able Danger had identified information that could have prevented 9/11. We got the wedge in the door. I've given you some more of it. You're going to bring the facts in on the buildings, and we're going to tell this story. I don't know where it goes, but you know what? If you do something wrong in your profession, you're held accountable. If I do something wrong in my profession, I'm held accountable. I don't want some unnamed bureaucrat getting away with killing thousands of people and then being able to hide it. That's not America. And it's up to us to make sure that doesn't happen.
That's right. And it's up to all of us here out in the audience. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one point I'd like to make: nowhere in my life, having investigated failures all over the place, did they hide the debris, a source of a huge amount of information, and it was taken away. Why would it be taken away? Trying to hide what actually happened doesn't make any sense. So anyway, everywhere you turn, there's a problem.
We've got to put it together. You know, I was a co-author of this book last summer. This was written by Democrat Joe Long, and it talks about how Republicans and Democrats need to work together. I was one of 15 members she asked to co-author it, and my chapter's on public safety. And the point is that public safety is not a partisan issue. Democrats and Republicans understand. If you awaken the firefighters and get their backs up, it's all over. They will get what they want. What we need to do, because they were the ones that suffered when 9/11 happened. There's 343 firefighters that were cremated. I brought Ray Downey's widow and 5 kids down to my district 1 month after 9/11. They're the people we're fighting for. They're the people. Their legacy should not be in vain. The fact that they died trying to protect people they never knew, never met, and you have the facts. And now we have to put the energy behind it. We have a president who is willing to take the lead and open the doors that no one's ever opened before. And again, I was been a good friend of Biden's. We grew up in neighboring towns. He was a co-chair of my fire caucus. But Joe's on the way out now. Now it's a new day. And with your facts and your timing and the work you've done, the movies, I think it's really, you can not only make history, I think you can change America and you can change the world, because you can show that when you come out with the truth and you stand up and you're not afraid, in the end, everyone will benefit. Thank you.
That is the goal. Thank you for bringing this opportunity to us. And I also want to thank Raul Angulo, because he's very heavily involved as well as many others. And folks, this is just the beginning chapter of this particular story arc in the long history of AE 9/11 Truth. Over the next several months, we're going to be bringing you updates as things develop, telling you what is going on. We could have sat on this a little bit longer, but we wanted to share this with you, especially as we go into the holiday season, because we want to give you hope as you experience Christmas and New Year's this year. But please stay tuned into AE 9/11 Truth's media, because we are going to be covering this a lot, talking to various people involved with it. It's not just the people you see here on the screen, but we want to thank you for helping us get to this point. And 9/11 Truth is yours if you want it. To sort of paraphrase the John Lennon song, "War is over if you want it." Well, we can have justice for those people that died so many years ago on that terrible day if we want it. But we're going to need your help, not just financially, but also getting the word out, being the 9/11 Truth movement of old that I saw back in 2007, and being the media, because they're probably not going to help us out from experience. I could be wrong. Hope I'm wrong, but maybe not. So
happy holidays to all.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on 9/11 Free Fall today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman.
Hit that notification bell and slam the like button and subscribe. Thanks.